as I'm saying, and that's where the issue is.
Yeah.
But from now until it gets to Parliament, or even where it is in Parliament, when it is in Parliament, you require the public consultation, people, because why you need to consult the public is not just about for people to know, but it's also for people to say, to follow the process, but also to know what their representatives are doing, whether it is in line with what they also expect or want them to do. Because it is usually very easy for representatives to come to Parliament and say, I consulted my people, this is what they say, this is what they say. And sometimes, if you ask the people their aspiration and what their representative are saying is totally different. And I agree.
And that's not even what I'm saying, but go ahead and finish.
Where the role of civil society comes in. How do you facilitate and support these processes where those things have to be there? But what we get right now is also a draft where people are trying to digest. It's something that people are trying to digest. What is inside? What is not inside? Do you agree with it? Don't you agree with it? I'm happy that Madi is here, because Madi himself has been proposing, one particular approach, which is more like citizen assemblies, which I feel also needs to be, to be looked at to a certain extent, but how to integrate it widely would be problematic. But there is the bottom line is whether the whole of the 2020 draft we introduced as it was, it will create conversation, just like whether they touch it, it also will create conversation. But at the end of the day, what is important is all what we are saying in terms of the consultation. For me, the consultation should not be just to pick few individuals, normal faces. It should be bottom up. It should start from the communities. In every community, there are village development committees. And this current draft affects, especially with
but say not to cut you there. If you start to go that,
let me finish. You see, what I don't want us to do is also for us because right now we are complaining that there's a capturing of the whole process by cabinet. If we limit it, also bringing people here, we'll be accused of that same process. But at the community level, every community you have village development committee. There are village development committees. Can they start the conversation at that level? To what extent? How is this particular proposed bill? How is it going
to change from interacting with you for many, many years, knowing you're a true Democrat and you want to see a Gambia different from our current predicament? I get that one.
Affect their own communities. For me, these are the kind of questions that people need to be asking. And for us, these are the things that we need to start pushing to the community if we are going with the option of
but say that has already been done before.
That was done with the 2020 draft. This is a new one.
Yeah, I understand that. It's not a new one per se. They took stuff out and made changes that most people don't appreciate, and I understand that part. But what I'm trying to say is,
but most of these changes were also opposed.
Yes, I agree.
Most of the things that were in the draft are things that the Constitutional Review Commission said it should be there because people said they wanted to have it there.
I agree with you.
For them, they don't want that. They remove that. So for me,
I agree with you.
Since they don't, they need to go back to the people.
No, I agree with you. What I'm saying is, no, say it. I agree with you. But what I'm trying to say is this: that where we are at this point right now is that we have a Constitutional Review Commission that came with a proposed draft. You already said that, and we all agree with that, and we are all on the same page on that. The government went back and took that the same proposed draft and made changes to it, adding stuff and deleting stuff and all that kind of stuff that many people don't appreciate, and rightfully so. What I am saying is that when you bring representatives from around the country, in the same room, around the table, and say, okay, here's it, like I was just telling Musa, here is the 2024 proposed draft. Well, those people are going to come with the 2020 proposed draft. Even civil society, I'm sure, will come with it, the 2021, and say, why did you take this out? And then the conversation really is going to take place around the 2024 draft in that regard. When that happens, whatever comes out of consultation, we will also reflect.
Let's get Brother Madi.
Is Madi here too? Okay.
Madi just joined.
I'm speaking from a civil society. Can I conclude this part? I'm not disagreeing with what you were saying, but I'm saying that, for if it was a bill, like a normal bill, I would say, let's bring in people and say, let's consult them for those kind of stuff. But we are talking about a constitution. For me, like, that's why I'm trying to separate the conversation, because a constitution, for me, I see it is at it's a different level. Because eventually, who are these people that because eventually you have to say what you are proposing, you'll get delegates and all those different stuff. To what extent these delegates will represent the people that will send them and all those different stuff will be another issue. But I'm going to keep quiet so that Madi can discuss this issue, because this is his
Brother
area.
Madi. Brother Madi, we are at the cul-de-sac. 4 years ago, we went through this and we know what happened. We're back to square one. Where do we go from here? We need help. We need a messiah or something. Brother Madi.
Thank you. Great to be here. Nice to see you, Banker.
Nice to see you too. It's been a while.
Yes, state and our hope. So if we can get solution from state, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, once again, Saria, and yeah, Musa, it's great to be here on this very important topic. Um, I'm having mixed feelings, trying to figure out, in fact, where to start. Because the task we have is very easy, provided certain things are, we recognize certain things, but also it's very difficult, because if you want to make it difficult, as this government has made it very difficult for us, we have to remember that in the first place, candidate Barrow in 2026 in his manifesto has highlighted a new constitution as one of the objectives when they came to power. And indeed, they did set up a CRC Act in 2017. 2016, yeah. But I mean, when they took office, they created what is called the CRC Act, Constitutional Review Commission Act, and the 1997 Constitution is very clear. I mean, in the TRRC, the testimonies from lawyers like Gay So have highlighted, and then a charm, the inadequacies, of that constitution. So there's no doubt that we need a new constitution. The 2020 draft, I think it was a wonderful draft. The fears and the concerns expressed at the time, particularly by individuals, religious groups, Muslim and Christian, I think are baseless. It's either out of ignorance, or people are just generating imaginary fears on themselves, so that that aside, we saw how this president woefully failed to defend something that he initiated himself, and so we got to this point. And after having spent that much money and so much time, you now bring us this draft 2024, which in some instances is even worse than the 1997 constitution, in the way they have diluted you know checks and balances. They have diluted human rights standards. They have diluted, governance standards generally, and heaped so much power in the hands of the executive, the president in particular, which is a real cause for concern for me. And above all, which I will deal with tomorrow in an article I'm writing, on the issue of term limit. You know, People need to go back to read that provision, which the way it is crafted is already crafted to create a turmoil in future. That provision is a crisis in waiting, because the same kind of structure that we saw Watt depend on, that we saw Macky Sall depend on, that we saw Ouattara depend on, are plunging their countries into turmoil, wasting so many lives. And this government, again, this cabinet, refusing to deal with the issue of term limits, particularly when that term limit begins, crafted a provision that only tells us who is the first president of the first republic or the third republic, which is not a brainer at all. if you have a new constitution, certainly the president sitting at the time would be considered the first president of the Third Republic.
Correct.
So that is not an issue. So that at the end of the day, I follow the conversation. There are two things. Barrow, if he's aware, of the responsibility in his hands, if he's aware and care about legacy, if he's aware of the future stability, the development, the transformation of the government into a modern, democratic, civilized state, here it is for him to take advantage after having, betrayed that, obligation since 2020. All right. So that for the cabinet to sit down and craft this, what they consider to be a constitution, is most unfortunate. And, so the issue is, what do they want? What kind of government do they want as a body? That is basically it. And I think we as intellectuals, journalists, activists, and everyone else need to call this spade a spade. That we have a cabinet that practically wants to derail the country, that practically wants to keep the country in backwardness, that practically wants to keep the country or transform the country into a dictatorship by looking at the provisions that are in the 2024 draft. Now, going forward, since 2018 or 17, when the CRC Act was done, I had said the CRC Act is a disaster in itself. All right, because in the Act, when you go back to the CRC Act, you will not see in clear terms how are we going to get a new constitution. The most important part, they put it in what they call miscellaneous provisions, that the CRC would submit to the president, and the president would submit it to the National Assembly untouched, and then full stop. What is National Assembly going to do with it? How? That isn't spelled out. Now, the idea of submitting a constitution to the National Assembly, I had said it at the time, that is wrong. The executive and the legislature are not the bodies to write a constitution for the people of a country. It is the people of the country who should write their constitution, because the constitution is their opinion about how they should run themselves. So that what the executive should do and the legislature is to facilitate that process by ensuring that the power, the ability, the freedom is with the people to generate their own opinions, to put it in a document as a draft and send it back to the people to go to a referendum. All right. Now they failed to do that, and then they, depended on the 1997 constitution to want to create a new constitution, which in itself is unconstitutional, because the 1997 constitution, like any national constitution, has no provision to repeal itself. Under section 226 of the 1997 constitution, all the provisions I are talking about is about how do you amend the 1997 constitution, either by repealing certain provisions or changing provisions and so on. But there's no provision that talks about repealing 1997 constitution. Therefore, if you want to depend on the 1997 constitution to repeal the 1997 constitution, by the standards of 1997 constitution itself, that is unconstitutional. And what is going to be even more dangerous is to say you are going to create the constitution into a promulgation bill and submit it to the parliament for parliament to decide, so that eventually they come with a product for referendum. Now, anything that goes into the parliament is going to be captured by political parties, by politicians. So there'll be party capture. So if you could recall, in 2020, I was one of the voices that were telling the MPs, don't touch our constitution. All right? Just pass it on so that it goes to the IEC. We have a referendum on it, governments decide. But they submitted to the parliament. And so I wasn't surprised in 2020 when it did not pass. And rightly so, because if you submit something to the parliamentarians to go and decide, that's what they will decide. Now, if we come back to 2024 and we want to take the same route, I have no doubts that this bill, promulgation bill, if it gets back to the parliament, it is going to collapse again. So the way forward really is for somebody to tell Barrow and his Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Dauda Jallow, and the entire cabinet that if you truly want to build a constitution for this country, there's a different process we need to take. And that is, how do we establish somebody, a body, an entity, you can call it Constituent Assembly, or a national consultative body, or whatever body name you call it, and submit this draft to that group, the religious groups, the civil society, the professional groups, the political parties, government representatives, everyone in that body, representative of the nation, so that they review this draft, with support from an expert committee like the CRC committee, the experts we have in the CRC, to put it into the proper language, so that when we agree on that constitution, that draft constitution would be something we would submit now to the IEC to conduct a referendum. If you look at the 24 draft, or if you look at the 2020 draft, and even the 1997, when it was a draft, you'll have a provision there, transitional provisions, that upon coming into force of this constitution, the current constitution is hereby repealed. Because only the people can repeal their constitution. The National Assembly cannot repeal our constitution. The president cannot repeal our constitution. So the only people who can repeal our constitution is the people themselves. Because the constitution is the property and the imagination and the opinion of the people. So it's the people who said we are going to be ruled by this constitution. And it's the people who can say, we will now throw away this constitution and we are now creating a new constitution. So the role of the executive and the assembly is, how do you facilitate that? So our draft should not go to parliament for parliamentarians who are politicians from political parties with vested interests to come and decide what should be in that parliament, or constitution, or what should not be there. And so we can talk about all these processes of consultation, bringing people together and so on. At the end of the day, you bring the people together and we go around the country to every village and town in this country. There will still be a draft, a final draft, which will still go to parliament, who will discuss it. And there is where it will collapse. So I think we are in a futile exercise, and I hope our legal minds, particularly, would exercise their mind to this issue of what constitutes a constitution, how does a nation build a constitution, learn from experiences. All right. So the way forward for me, that is it. But we have taken this route, and so for me.
So Madi, I hear you, and maybe tell me if I'm wrong. The 2020 draft, it's the people draft, because basically, if you're talking about just creating a mechanism that will expedite, everything that was in it came from the people, whether they're from Yao or they're from Atlanta, Georgia. Gambians were consulted, and that's how this whole draft was put together. So you're saying in 2020, instead of going through the National Assembly, it should have been taken directly to the IEC to organize a referendum.
Right. Now, even before the IEC, because of course, constitution is the opinion of the people, so it will always be contentious because people are different levels. So what would have facilitated it to prevent the vibration that happened in 2020 was to establish a constituent assembly, so that the CRC would have sent the constitution, the draft constitution, to that body, so that they will engage on it, heatedly, so that when they are done with it, that draft would now be subjected to a referendum.
So who's gonna form that constitutional assembly? Is it gonna be chosen by the people? Is it gonna be selected by the president? How do you put that constitutional assembly? If you're telling me you shouldn't go through the National Assembly, the representative of the people, elected by the people of Badibu, Central Badibu, Iskiang, Salum, you're saying no. Let's create a new entity called a constitutional assembly. How do you create that?
Right. So, Musa, if you recall, I was saying the role of the executive and the executive, the legislature, is to facilitate that process. So certainly, that constitutional assembly would have been created by the executive together with the National Assembly and any other stakeholders, because you want a body that is as representative, as legitimate, and as fair and balanced as much as possible. So there's no harm for the president with the National Assembly to engage all stakeholders and political parties to see how do we gather that number of people. Should be 100 people, 50 people, 200 people also, and see how do we select these people, like how we selected representatives in the CRC or GRC, the commissioners, how did we select them, and so on. So there has to be a process, and the National Assembly is important in that process. The president or the executive is important in that process. But all their role is, how do you facilitate the creation of this body so that it is this body that will review, vet, approve that draft constitution, so that when it is done, all that got to be done is to submit it to the president. He may pass it through the National Assembly, but untouched, so that all the National Assembly has to do is just pass it to the IEC for us to have a referendum. Now, Musa, just think about it this way. All right. Look at Zimbabwe. I mean, Bangladesh right now. They've overthrown their president or prime minister. They've overthrown, suspended their parliament. All right. If they need to write a new constitution, there's still an authority in the country. There's an interim government. I mean, there may not be a parliament, but through the structures that are available,
wanted to put a safeguard on that way they can say, oh, national security, we will not have this. I don't think that is fair. And that's not what the people say. That's not what the will of the people. When they went around, they spent almost what, 110 or 116 million of money flying around. Then you mirrored it to what you wanted to see. That's just not what Gambians want. And I think this compromise, what do you want to compromise on? There is absolutely nothing out there that we need to even, it's not even a non-starter, right? People, the fact that the biggest one is the accountability and integrity part of it. I mean, we sit down here every week, corruption. All of what Gambians aspire is, if you're coming to the office, for God's sake, declare your assets. What do you have? When you're leaving, you declare what you left. I mean, it's a very standard protocol, right? Why are you afraid? Why do you have to take the whole entire thing out? And we need to compromise on that for what? And you talk about the confirmation. Yes, the president has the ability to nominate someone. He has the power to do that. But also, I think it's also good based on our political climate. Right now, it's very toxic. People who needs to be apolitical. I think I seen that confirmation process for somebody to come on the record and for the person to know that I need to execute the office of which I am privileged to lead, without being somehow succumb to when you didn't work with Alawat Barrow expect he can fire you. I think there should be safeguards in place. Yes, he can. But I think based on qualification, answering the question, he or she should be eligible for a top or down vote. If he doesn't have the vote, he doesn't need to. And I think it helps us as a country that we don't, head of the police, IG, immigration, state intelligence, even the CDS, they should understand that I am there for the people of the Gambia, not per se to the president. He's a commander. You still have to respect him. But you cannot follow laws or interference on things that are against the law. I think that's what the people of the Gambia fought for. And that's what they expressed in those town meetings. If Barrow and Daudas Jallo went and sat down and watered this down to tailor to Barrow's entrenching himself into power, I think people should be outraged. This man this whole thing went over his head. He went after the justice. There was separation of power. Judiciary has to come up with their own budget and submit it to the Minister of Finance. That's been in place for a very long time. Now he is saying, oh, they have to take that budget to him for him to bless. What are the separation of powers in there? So there are a lot of good, besides just, we cannot focus on the 50+1 part. There are more important fundamentals in the Constitution that were removed. And if Gambians expect that they need to go with the flow because we want change so bad, we had one change before, which is 2016, and it's not working very well. And if we're naive and go with this whole change again, I think we're shooting ourselves on the foot here. And I think everyone needs to be clear. Accusation of politics, that's besides the point. This whole thing, retroactive clause, that is besides the point. There are more important aspects. If we keep sitting here and talking about system change, what are the drivers for system change? Accountability, number one. Accountability and transparency. You have to. Don't come into office, try to enrich yourself at the detriment of the poor people. And that's what's been happening. That's been, we starting here with why do we have to? 50+1 is not even, that's not very important. And the retroactive, most of the stuff.
Oh my God.
No, hold on. Hold on. I'm not losing you. You signed your thought. I sat here. You gave me the floor. Let me pounce on this thing. Let me pounce it. I think there is. Oh no, we have to be honest. The 50+1, the retroactive clause. I think accountability and most of the separation, especially the local government, This man wants to demolish their local government because he's not happy with the folks that are out there. It's been independent. Let's keep it like that. Colin Powell said, keep it simple, keep it stupid. If he ain't break, don't fix it. It has been working, but because what he wants is, this is the grab. This is man is entrenched. And guess what? That's why we didn't have the TRRC pass. We didn't have all these things. And the most fundamental thing, the arrest from 72 to 48, 48 to 72, he put it back to 72. Because people for 22 years, Gambians been maimed, tortured, disappear. People don't want that anymore. They said 48 hours. If you don't have proof, leave them. Oh no, they did a backdoor deal. Again, the Barrow Dowda Jallo Constitution of 2024, without consultation, they went behind the scene and they drafted. And somehow, we need to compromise. Compromise, because that's the very good vehicle for change. 2026. I don't buy it. I don't buy it.
Thank you, Soldier. Let's agree. Let's kind of highlight what we agreed on. We agreed that the way they started the process in itself is flawed. I mean, you cannot take the People's Constitution and just go and take a stab at it. I have issues with that. I have issues with this lack of consultation. I do. I have issues with some of the things that you highlighted. Working arrest of people from 48 to 72 hours. It's not a deal breaker. It's not a deal breaker for me. I will not sacrifice my 2 5-year term, a term limit for the next 100 years, just because of these 48 and 72 hours. Should they have done that? No, they shouldn't. And I have issues with it, but it's not a deal breaker for me. An entire chapter on leadership was removed, yanked out, where it talks about integrity. Thank you, Aziz Bensouda. The whole chapter was yanked out about governance. I have issues with it. It's aspirational. It's not a deal breaker for me. You're right. Seriously, some of these changes were made. And you know what is sad, Sarian? Extremely sad. I think somebody was saying that some of these changes were made having UDP in mind. And it looks like this government, when they make decisions about the people, they cannot take their eye out of what would UDP do or say. And that, to me, it's so horrible, Dawda Jallo. It's so bad. You're talking about the People's Constitution. Why does that matter? This is not UDP's constitution. This is not what UDP said or didn't say. This is about feedback that they got from the Gambian people. So when you are going to make changes, that should be the only consideration. They did not do that. Again, where we would have differences, you said 50+1 is not important. It is important. I think, to me, it's one of the fundamentals that I think the next constitution should have it. That no one will be elected to office, no one, without having more than 50% of the votes. That is the flaw, my friend. It's important. Term limit, it's important. Consumer protection, according to Mr. Bensouda, was also the rights and goods and services was deleted. Is it important? It's very important. But you see, constitution for me cannot have everything. It cannot. At the end of the day, it cannot. Let's just be realistic. Even the United States Constitution, Nila M, something like that. You can't go and put everything, man, Matsariang, string digante, what we do, what we don't do. You put it in the Constitution, you get into the details. I think that's a waste of time. You are right. I have issues with the way they approach this decentralization. Even in the 1997 Constitution, as we speak, it has that. But it didn't make any difference. But the fact that they yank it out, it basically proves what you were saying. Now, they're only doing it because of Yankuba Dabo being at West Coast, Taliban Suda being at KMC, and what's his name being in Rohim Malik Law, my sister. Tangalon no show me that last week. For you to go and just yank that, the Fagina. So, are they serious about this thing passing? And if they think for a minute by doing that, and then UDP will vote against it, or whoever, and you're going to blame it on them, you think Gambians, we are stupid? Really? You seriously believe, Nay, you are doing all this so that, because Mr. Dabo said, if you touch it, my people would vote against it. So, you're going to touch it, make changes, and somehow we would say,
I want us to stay on the Constitution, not be quoting people. And UDP has absolutely nothing to do with this Constitution. Let's not drive the conversation to one party or another. This is about Barrow and Dawda Jallow doing some shady stuff against the will of the people. That's what the conversation is supposed to be.
Remove those lenses. Listen to what I said.
No, there is no lens. I mean, I am just saying.
Hold on.
We gotta stay on target. Your feed is gonna. Today we're gonna speak the truth here. This has nothing to do with UDP.
You gotta allow me to finish. It has nothing to do with UDP. But what I'm saying is, UDP did make a statement. Are you saying that we're not going to talk about it? Their statement. Look at it. How I said it. I said.
I am not taking debate today. I'm telling you. I'm prepared to talk, to communicate to Gambians about the draft country, not UDP. That's what you always want to drag it. This is not about UDP. I'm telling you, it's not about UDP.
Bro, relax. Anytime we raise UDP, you get on Skype 50.
No, it's not. But I don't know. Let's stay on tangent. They are allowed to discuss. This has nothing to do with UDP.
Who said that? Who said that?
Esafal was on Gambia Talent talk about the country. You didn't quote your. Let's stay on target.
Sariang, relax.
I want us, Musa. All I'm asking is let's stay on the conversation. Let's stay on the conversation.
You stay on your topic, the things the way you see it. Let me say it the way I see it. Because if not, we're not going to go anywhere. That's what for the people, by the people is all about. What I'm saying is simple. All right? What I'm saying is simple. This issue is about our constitution. Yes, it's a political process. Don't filibuster. Don't filibuster. I am not blaming anyone. The only, bro, wait. Oh my God.
I'm not. All I want us to have a conversation talk about the Constitution, not blaming someone a political statement. No.
You talk.
No. Go ahead. No, it's not. Here's the thing. When we started meddling UDP is not the only one that has come out and say, oh, the Constitution, blah, blah. There were several others, right? But the key fundamental here is it has nothing to do with any political party. Every Gambian has to be outraged. National Assembly members, he tried to take their powers away. He tried to take the judicial independence away. Even the composition of judges, who needs to sit down and select judges, has been compromised. Right? So I am just saying, the 50, you say your deal breaker. I'm not saying it's not about, but here's the thing, another thing. And I saw Mr. Water writing, oh, it's not. I don't know, but that's not a deal breaker to me. The one that is deal breaker to me, the things that he took out, because that's what Gambians aspire to see their leaders in the future. We don't want a leader who comes in without having any money to enrich himself and the immunity clause that he can work free. That's not what we want. That's not what people, when they went around did consultation in 2021, that's not what they expressed. He watered that down. And now that should be the central theme of not wigging away and wiggling away about some political, what they make. But they can make political stuff. They are Gambians. They are entitled to that. But let's stay on tangent here.
As an independent analyst, I come
You can be independent. Okay.
And what I would do is discuss this thing where it's supposed to be discussed. If you come with a hammer and all you want to do is hit on one side without expert, bro, you gotta listen.
No, go ahead. Go. I am just saying. Go ahead. Go ahead.
What I'm saying.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I told you, we agreed. If there is one party to blame, it's the Barrow government and the Attorney General. I absolutely agree with that. And should we take it lying down? We shouldn't take it lying down. I am with you on that. And there's another thing that I wanted to talk about. I told you the things that are not deal breakers for me. I did say that. Now, do I want them to touch the 2020 draft? I wish it wasn't touched. I wish not even a period was put on it so that the National Assembly will have a take on it. That's what I would have preferred. That's what I would have, because then it has a chance of passing. Now, do I believe this thing is going to pass? It is not going to pass. I don't even think it's going to pass the National Assembly. And even if it were, because the only way, because the threshold is high, the only way this thing could pass even a referendum, you have to have 50% of the electorate participating. You have to have 75% of the people voting for it. I don't think that's going to happen if you have this whole political jockey. And the only reason why we are in this situation is because of them and the way that they handle it. They are not interested in having a new constitution. And that's extremely sad. And this is where I'm gonna close, and I let you have the floor. But if we're gonna have this conversation, I'm gonna say things that you don't like, but at least respect me to hear me out.
I do not dislike. I've seen it. No, hold on, Musa. I think the conversation's supposed to center. I thought you said I have the floor.
No.
I thought you said you just said I had
the floor.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Bro, we're gonna have enough time. We're gonna have Yusuf Ajao. We're going to have Madi Jabate. We're gonna expand this conversation. Today is all about the Constitution. But what I'm saying is, if we are going to have a conversation, you are going to say something that I may not completely agree with, but it's your right to say it. I'm going to say something that you completely disagree with, but don't tell me, oh, don't change the thing. This has nothing to do with. I don't say it has anything to do with that. I am talking about man. I know for a fact these people, Dauda Jallo and the status quo, they come through this constitution seriously, and they have all these things in their head. And I think, without thinking, the only person that they should be thinking is this is the people's constitution, and that should be the only consideration. The other issue that I want to warn Dauda Jallo and Barrow, you see, you have Burkina Faso, you have Mali, you have Guinea-Conakry. And if they're not careful, and I seriously mean this, in the absence of having a constitution that people believed in, that change is imminent and change is possible, you are going to give cues to other people that will say, you know what? If these people want to take us back, create a constitution that change is not imminent, they'll take things into their own hands. And if that happens, we will be worse off as a country. And they better believe that it could happen. My friend Sarian.
Musa, here's the thing. I don't want this thing to be lost in the translation. The focus here, and it should be today, it's the Constitution. It's a dismal document. And there was no consultation on the process. That's just a fact. And somehow, this whole thing, I think somehow we just need to, for me today, I'm not thinking about politics. I'm thinking about what is right and what we aspire as a country to achieve, regardless whether Barrow stays on or not, or who the next president is. If the next president, if these controls are not in place, it's the same old, right? So what we need to fight for is the things that are watered down. And that is more critical to me than what I'm trying to say, 51. 51%, if you do a shady deal behind the scene, you did not do consult, before even people read it, they had resentment against the document. You did not do your consultation process. And as you highlighted here, he did not talk to the press. There was absolutely no appendix attached to it. Why they did this, people trying to push back somehow, people should, it has nothing to do. Let's talk about morality and integrity and honesty. That's what I wanted to talk about. This is more of politics. We need change. No, it's not all about change. It's about the institution. That's what we want to put in place. Oversight, honesty, transparency. Because these are all key ingredients that's going to push, a country. If we want to see a country that is free from corruption, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? What are some of the modalities that we need to put in place? It's not there. It's taken out. We're talking about 51%. 51%. Tell me, you can go around, and the retroactive fraud, that's not even more important. As I said, I'm speaking from, I'm not saying that you should be universally acceptable. You state your thought here. I did not interject. I didn't say that was worse. I didn't say that. I listen. What I'm trying to say is these fundamentals that are taken out. If we want a country that we're going to hold our officials accountable, that they do not take us for a ride, not that as a service to the people, to the country, not enriching themselves. Are you there for the office, the privilege that brusts the privilege, or you are there to serve the people? And these are key fundamentals, Musa. I think that's where I'm driving at. I think these ones that are watered down is a showstopper right there. And I think Dauda Jallo, being appointed as Minister of Justice, should put a lot of thought process and think about the current political climate. But if you put these things there, people are complaining, and you water down the version of the one that came from the majority, and there was a consultation. Now, where would the political? Let's take the political. We cannot even continue to think about politics all the time. I think, for God's sake, moving forward, let's do what is right and what is good for Gambia. We've been through these trenches for how many years now? 50-something years. Last week, we sat down here, we're talking about land allocation and all that. This right here undermine that argument, because if we're not standing up and say enough is enough, we're not going to, it undermines our argument. So that's why I'm telling you, okay? I'm not saying that should not be part of I'm not saying that. I'm saying, to me, these are the deal breakers. These are more important.
Sarian, we come here every Sunday. You are Sarian, I'm Musa. We have our own different political orientation. People tune in and they want to listen to both of us. Like I said, so Funjar Deguwante, Funjar, we have our back and forth. There are things, for me, I have highlighted. There are a lot of things that we have in common. I am equally outraged. Man, I want to see a new constitution. Really. And if it means making deals, there are things that I'm willing to make deals with. There are things that they are red line for me. But that's just me. That's just me. Now, to think that this is not politics, constitution making is a political process. So if you think you can do it without removing the politics, you are mistaken. So, Mandima Moine, I have highlighted what are the deal breakers for me that are important. 2-term limit is important to me. 50+1 is important to me. That doesn't mean, look, for me, living in the diaspora, be able to run for the presidency, it's important for me. But it's not a deal breaker. Manola Lawa. Consumer protection is not a deal breaker for me. You talk about the 48 hours or 72 hours. It's not a deal breaker for me. But you are right. These people, what they did was immoral. I agree. Loluman, I totally agree. And I think, now the question is, and we're going to bring Syed Matijao. We are where we are. What's the solution? What do we do? Are we just going to give them the finger and say, go to hell? Are we going to lay there and say, you know what? Forget it. Let's continue with 1997 Constitution. I think it is a conversation that we need to have. What are our options as a people? Or should we have mass mobilization and go to Makati Square and tell them, you know what? We ain't having it. Maybe that needs to be looked at. But an honest conversation needs to be had, and then we have to remove our partisan lenses when we come on this platform. That's what we need to do. It is not about SFR, it's not about UDP, it's not about NPP. It's about the political reality on the ground, because ultimately these parties are going to have their say whether this constitution pass or not. If NPP campaign against this constitution, it's not going to pass. If UDP does it, it's not going to pass. If DOI does it, it's not going to pass. So we cannot have this conversation without them mentioning them. Said Matijao has to come in. Ooh, for some reason.
Musa, I have conviction to speak on any issues. without being, I don't fear nobody to speak my mind on stuff. And I think it's very easy to accuse one person on wearing a partisan slash, even though in that individual's own analysis is skewed and biased. That's human nature. I can take that. I'm a big boy, right? But what I'm trying to say is, let's not skew, let's it not center. The conversation should not center about political parties today. Let's talk about the meat and potatoes of the document that's been shared.
That's what we are doing, though.
No, hold on. You mentioned, you said you would. I'll listen to you.
Sorry, yeah.
Listen to me too. I mean, it's not monolithic. The reason I get up at 8 o'clock in the morning to come on this, because I think through things and I come here, I want to share my perspective with the viewers, right? So we both got to respect that, right? But if we keep attacking or saying, oh, partisan lens, what partisan lens do I have? I did not speak here as a partisan or aligning to any political party. Mention one thing that I say that is partisan. It's not. It's not. It's not. So let's not do that. And I think this right here is the one that defeats this documentation and all that. I think we need to be cordial. We need to speak and sync on, and hopefully craft a message that's going to unify and bring Gambians together. But if we start finger pointing, you preempt before the document even people have had chance to read it. You wrote something on your Facebook page, right? But maybe that's Musa's way of preempting the document. But I wanted to read through the document and listen to the experts and have a conversation. And here it is. I want us to agree on stuff that we can move forward and have a conversation. Exactly. Whether we have the vote to pass this constitution. Oh, hold on. I get it. Oh, let me finish. Let me land. I respect the justice coming, but I gotta speak. I mean, I have to speak what I need to speak about. That way we can have a closure on this and move forward, right? Yes. So it's important that we state the facts. Okay? So and the facts shall set us free. So with that, I open the door to your guest to speak. What he has to say. Thank you.
It's our guest. Brother Said Mati.
Yes, Mr. Young.
How you been?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. Everybody's good.
I really want to thank you because it's a last minute thing. Actually, Samba was trying to get hold of you the past couple of days. You must be a busy man.
It's just the writing sometimes. Have some reports to finish.
Right.
And
right.
I'm happy that I'm here because this is also an important process that we've been following for some time. And even me listening to you guys, some of my ideas, I say, they are getting what they wanted. Divide people and so that things could work in that way. But yeah.
Said Mati, I greet you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Malang. Happy to be back here.
All right, thank you.
So Sid,
yeah,
we are where we are. I understand that at some point you were either anyway, what's your take on this whole document thing? And where does that leave us? We went through the 2020 draft. It was ditched 4 years ago. Here it re-emerges again. Where are we? Most people looking at it, they're calling it a non-starter.
Yeah, I mean, it's two things. On one side, there've been, since the rejection of the first one, there have been a lot of calls, especially among civil society and one of the organizations that have been leading, perhaps, Marnyang's Gambia Participate. There have been quite a lot of conversation on how to bring back the constitution and all that. But the second issue was also how do we come about that process? Do we go to the National Assembly or the executive has to also come up with their own draft? I think for me, one of the questions that was answered basically was that there's definitely a need, an urgency for us to have a constitution, but also, what kind of mechanism or process that we need to follow to reintroduce the draft constitution. I think those questions were not really tackled. And so when I saw the draft, I mean, of course, if there was no consultation, because it shows that we have moved from a process or a stage of the development to something that has been basically delivered by a particular group or small group of individuals. And for me, that's, like when people talk about the document and all that, for me, that is very important. But for me, my interest is usually on the process because, as we all know, I mean, we are not making a constitution for anybody. We are making a constitution for all of us. And so we are making a constitution for the Gambia. And therefore, the process of bringing Gambians on board and be part of that process, for me, that is what is very central in terms of this constitution making process. And so today, people will compare two things. They will compare what the process of bringing about the draft 2020 that was rejected, which everybody agreed that it was very consultative, it was very engaging. The constitutional process used a very scientific, broad-based methodology to engage with the community. But also at the end of their engagement, they came out with a report, whether you agree or disagree with their the final draft that they presented, they came up with justification and reason why they did those kind of stuff. And so you compare that to what we have right now. One, it answers the aspiration of the people. Of course, people wanted a constitution, so therefore we'll just give them a constitution, but doesn't address basically, carrying along the voices of the people. Because recently we had a national dialogue, and the issue of a constitutional process came about, and there were quite a conversations around that process. And then now you just come up, you release a document, and people don't see themselves in it. And I think that's the biggest challenge now, the biggest question that we have to address. And for me, is the responsibility of government also to see how best we can make people to be part of the process. But otherwise, like it is, most of the comments, most of the engagements that I see is more of disappointment. But at the end of the day, what I also say is that a document, whatever it is, a draft is also an opportunity. This one comes from the cabinet, but it is going to the people's representative, the National Assembly. But of course, there are also people people already know is already politically charged, so it might not go through. So at the end of the day, is it that we are creating a constitution for the people of the Gambia, or are we creating a constitution just to tick some sort of a box? Because recently the government is really under pressure, both from the donor community but also from ECOWAS. And everybody has seen that. And of course, there's also that internal pressure that is also coming from the need to have a constitution. And so for me, it's just like, let's just answer their question and then present something without necessarily capturing or factoring what the people's reactions or what people will really think about those issues. And I think currently this is where the debate is. But I think for me still, as long as there's something that is presented, it's either the people can, pick it up and say, well, this is our document, we have to protect it and engage in the process, or we can, just let politics or just, allow to be distracted, because even the current document as it is a source of distraction for most of us. But what is the commitment then in terms of this aspiration that we all shared, that led to the change, ending self-perpetuating rule, but strengthening our democratic and governance processes, ensuring accountability, ensuring that the exclusive or the powers of the president is also executive is also checked. But what we also have, and listening to, I haven't gone through the entire document, but so far I have following comments and commentaries, especially from legal experts, and also looking at the document in terms of what has been changed. You start asking yourself, I mean, is this the dream or the aspiration that we have from 2016 coming to now? Or is it that, something that is even in certain instances is even pushing us back to even before 1997? So there are those questions that, I think, like Serian was saying, it's important that we focus on the document, but we also must talk about processes and see how, because constitutional making is about that as well. And usually people tend to forget that. But how do we bring everybody online, as part of the process? I think this current draft has not been able to answer that. And I think for me, this is where the current conversation is. But I think definitely the to know that you need 75%, you need 75% outside, with 50% turnout, and you decided to just meet and come up with a draft without consulting people prior to that, or even the political actors, or even clearly to tell us that these were the controversial issues before, and this is what has been addressed. I mean, so those are things that are still part of the issues that I hear about this process. And I think for me, that is the dangerous part. And that's the first lesson that I'm saying. And that's what I'm learning right now.
So, so it looks like, said Mati, listening to you, I mean, this thing is dead on arrival. Obviously, the process is already compromised, how it was rolled out. I mean, I don't think they can go back and fix that. It is what it is. Does that tell us that maybe all along?
Well, I mean, yeah. No, sorry, the network. I didn't get that. I mean, so I wouldn't just, for me, I'm still, I wouldn't just say that it's there on arrival. I usually have this optimistic feeling, but until the last part. But the question for me is that, is the question of whether the document could be safe, and how can it be safe? And as it is right now, is a document that has to be really negotiated. Before, everybody was saying, we're looking at it from a political lens, that it has to be negotiated. Even among our civil society, I think the conversation was, I mean, mostly what the Constitutional Review Commission did was mostly captured what people aspired or people wanted, and some of the issues that people disagreed were mostly from a political, were seen mostly from a political lens. But what currently is happening with this current draft is no longer about party grouping or anything. It basically kind of affect the broad social setup. In terms of even local governance, in terms of many other aspects, we people wanted to see more power, because the 1997 Constitution talk about decentralization that gives, development must be accessed through decentralization, and even now that's what people are demanding. But you come and basically, as some will say, bastardize that whole section. Even then, implementation or creating those kind of institutions or replacing those institutions are also critical, that we also need to factor. So I mean, like being me myself, being said Mati, knowing that I am one person, one vote, and my role within civil society. I mean, it's not to discourage people, but to say, to ask people perhaps whether we can reflect on the possibility of an opportunity. And this is not about parliament anymore. This is about a constitution that is presented to the people, and how the people are going to respond to this is also very, very important, because eventually, I mean, our parliamentarians are there for the people. And so how do we engage in all those different processes? I think these are questions that civil society has to ask itself, but also political actors and everybody else. So for me, currently as it is today, if it was voted, I don't see people agreeing on it. But I think since we have 3 months or some other days, and eventually after, there's possibility. There's a possibility perhaps to fix the document.
Sorry, Ian.
All right, Mr. Jau. Mr. Jau, and thank you very much for highlighting. I think this should be about the document per se. And I know the processes that need to enlighten. But I think from your vantage point, I mean, there's areas that actually the work that you did in the past has impacted. And then my question to you is, since the government had a plan or intention to reintroduce this new draft, was there any consultation, for that matter, from the Ministry of Justice, or folks within his office, to work with your organization in areas of highlighting some of the, because you interface with the community and the voters at every onset. You travel extensively around the country. What are some of the steps that they did before? Were you aware of some of these changes or not?
Well, what I was aware of is that if you look at the National Development Plan, that government wanted to bring back the Constitution. That was very clear from the National Development Plan, from some of the policy statements and pronouncements that they have made. That was very, very clear. And also very recently, I think during the press conference, organized by the Ministry of Information, that's when I even also know that they were gonna gazette this draft by mid-month. But even also around that period, also we know at some point it was announced that cabinet was also going to sit on the draft constitution, and of course we also saw the information ministry sharing that. So for me, the only consultations that I've attended, I think, like I mentioned in the beginning, was those that were facilitated by Gambia Participate Marian's organization. Because like I said, civil society's role was also to help keep the momentum, so that we will not just, we are now talking about 4 years since it was introduced, but to ensure that government keep to its word, keep to its promise, and then reintroduce it. But to sit over the document, to to discuss it, to discuss what was deleted, what was added, what was not. I've not attended any such forum. I haven't heard of seeing any civil society member that also attended any such forum. And for me, I think this just comes from the cabinet meeting, and then it is gazetted and it is coming. It is presented to us. Maybe for them, this is where we should be consulted. Now, well, we have drafted, and so now you are being consulted. But in the process of getting this current draft, I'm not aware, and I won't participated in one that talks about that. But also during the national dialogue, I mean, because I think I facilitated the conversation with the political actors and institutions among civil society. And one of the recommendations also within that process was to bring this constitution back. Because in this country, you realize, and every time I argue that, most of our problems, sometimes we just limit it to individuals, but it's a structural problem in the sense that, we have all these colonial laws. Gambia has not been able to reform and revive itself, do all those sort of stuff. And so that's why it is important that we start focusing on this constitution to enlarge the space, ensure that, people can, there is issues of accountability and people can participate. So during those different conversation on convergence, the issue of the constitution keep coming up. But bring back the constitution, bring back the constitution. But like I was saying, the process, or how, and sometimes I raise this, but for us sometimes we are seen too academic, because sometimes you need to question that, like the how mechanism. And sometimes I wanted to see if Madi was coming here, because his proposal has been on creating citizen assemblies, but the other option has been also to, perhaps look at what the CRC has said and then follow that process and, send back the issue to the constitution. And I think during even the national dialogue, our recommendation was just to resubmit the draft as it was. So that's why I said, if this draft come up like this, and then you see the initial reaction, it shows that, people are saying, well, this is not our document, it's somebody else's document, but we'll have to look at it. And I think that's what we have to do at this minute.
Okay, thank you. So what is the process though, as far as, the MOJ intends to submit this draft, and from here, how does the process go until start to finish? Well, if you could enlighten us a little bit.
In my layman understanding, I'm not I'm interested in the process, but I'm not. But my understanding is that from here it's gazetted now, as per the constitutional requirement. So it will last from the 14th of August to Yeah, it should take like 100 days, 3 months, and 10 days, and then it will get to Parliament. And in that, then Parliament will have fourth reading, and I think the second reading, where also they'll have to discuss the merits and principles of the bill. If you remember last time, that's where the bill, ended. So if it succeeds, if it gets the 75%, or two-third majority, I think. Please, if I'm getting it wrong, people that understand it better could explain it. Then it moves to the committee stage, and where in the committee stage there could be that possibility of consultation. And I remember during the 2020 draft, I was hired by the UNDP as a consultant to draft a strategy in terms of the consultations within the committee process, and how the committee will engage with different stakeholders along those period, because there was that whole support in terms of that. So when it get to that stage, I think there will be a conversation around it, and if it pass consideration stage, and then eventually it has to be voted again on the third reading. And this time also it also requires 75% support. And if we get the 75% support, I think then the question, referendum question might be drafted and then to the IEC, where then a date for the referendum will be set. But the referendum itself also will require 75% support out of a total turnout of 50% of the registered voters. So this shows that the entire process, it requires like a majority support. It's very, very, very strong support. At least it needs 8 out of 10 Gambians to support almost every process, before it gets through. So it shows that also, for me, constitutional making is a peace building mechanism, where we're coming from a transitional process. We're talking about reconciliation. We're talking about that. This should have been an opportunity where Gambians sit around and then negotiate all these different issues. At least starting from cabinet consultation with the wider public, then subsequently, for the consultation at the National Assembly. And if people disagree, I mean, everyone is your vote. If you want to support, you support. If you don't want to support, you can vote against it. For me, but the most important part is along the process, are people informed enough about what their rights and responsibilities are along the way, but also what is the broader agenda. Those are things that we need to also focus. But for me, I think in my simple understanding, this should be the process.
Thank you, Coach.
Yes, guys. Thanks for joining you late, but I could not miss this, and
we miss you too.
I know. I see the so-called strategies and all that stuff. So I don't know what you said to him.
He was waffling. He started that since last week, so it's all right. I'm so used to it now. Let's go ahead. I know you're gonna be fair and balanced, so you got the floor, man. That's all right.
Yeah, but I think this is a very, very important undertaking. Yeah. Constitutional building should not be a walk in the park. Unfortunately for us, we have now resigned ourselves to, let's settle for this. And I think at some point, if you've been independent for almost 60 years, settling for things should be a thing of the past. If you look at this country that we live in today, the United States became independent in 1776. You know when their constitution was ratified and became operational? 1789, 13 years later. And the crafters of the document were not thinking about what benefited them then. They were thinking about what was in the greater interest of the country going forward. And this is why that document from 1789 to date has only been amended 27 times. There is a reason why the Gambia Constitution, if you want to call it the 1997 Constitution, nobody can tell you what the correct version of the Constitution is, because it has been amended for over 50-something times. Every time they feel that this favors us, let's amend it. And I think this is another missed opportunity again by President Barrow and his group, because I think they are more focused on what is in it for them than what is in it for the Gambian people. Listen, even if they had the intentions all together and say, you know what, we don't want this, I would have just changed a little things, if they need to change something, and let it go to the National Assembly, go through the committees, make your arguments. But isn't it interesting that everything they changed are the things that they complained about from the first time around? And let's look at this process. Since the failure of the CRC, when Barrow and his clique torpedoed that thing, they scuttled the whole thing, took it away from us. After all the monies that we spent, they went into this negotiation. They brought in international idea, whatever they call themselves. There was a meeting in Abuja. There were meetings all over the place. They engaged civil society. Everybody thought, you know what, maybe these people are interested in something serious. Only to come and write this document without consulting a single person outside of their group. Maybe they will tell you, oh, we spoke to some lawyers. Yes, if you pay lawyers and tell them what you want them to write, they will write exactly that for you. So to me, if this has shown anything, is not only the greed and selfishness of Barrow and his group, but the total dishonesty. And listen, some people will tell you, oh, term limits, 50 plus 1, we want that. But for once, we want a constitution that can stand the test of time. And constitution is not only dependent on whether we have term limits or not. Even the term limits, nobody can tell you what it means. There is a great chance that Barrow could be president for 20 years. 20 years before these term limits will kick in. And by then, you would look at our country. Jawara 32 years, Jammeh 22 years, and Barrow 20 years. And they said, you know what, now we're generous enough to give you term limits. And I believe that those Gambians who want to have a better constitution should fight like hell until we get that. That doesn't mean that we should just throw the bath water away and all that stuff. No. We'll engage in the process. We'll continue to advocate and agitate, engage our National Assembly members so that they will do the right thing. And look at some other issues. In the draft, the original draft, it said that those that are to be appointed as members of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission will have to be subjected to confirmation by the National Assembly. Now, you can even argue the ministers and say, well, he has the mandate, he can select his own ministers. But an institution like that, that is supposed to be the most independent institution, guided by integrity and everything, what is wrong with having it go through such a thing? And this is the same government that has just come out with a bill. They say they call it a vetting bill. They say they want to have a commission that is going to vet people that are appointed in the civil service. But you don't want to vet people who would occupy positions as high as the ones that would determine whether elections are free and fair in that country. And then there was another provision that said that if Musajeng is running for office and he declares his assets declaration would be sent to the Anti-Corruption Commission. It was set up for a reason. And the Anti-Corruption Commission would vet that declaration to see whether it is accurate or not, and then advise the Electoral Commission accordingly. But they decided, no, we don't want that. That is not going to be there. So first, you want to appoint the people that you want to serve in the Electoral Commission, and then want those people to be the same people that would vet your asset declaration. If there is one problem that we've had in the country for over 60 years now, close to, is rampant corruption. And people who have no regards for the welfare of our people. You come to power poor, you leave power rich. President Adam Barrow, I want to see his asset declaration from 2016. And then we can compare it to the one that he gave in 2021. And maybe that would be a clear explanation of this vast money-making machine that our political offices have become. I want, and another issue too, you know, the most abused provision of our Constitution is the detention of people for 72 hours, and then they should be charged or released. Do you know that the draft, the 2020 draft, had it at 48 hours, just like it was in the 1970 Constitution? But President Barrow and his people decided, no, we're not going to have 48 hours. We're going to go back to the 72 hours. And then you ask your question, what is their motive? What is their objective? And what has stopped them from saying, you know what, not only are we publishing this, but we are publishing for all governments to know the changes that we've made. Why should it take Gambians to be going and reading documents side by side to know what was changed and what was not changed? If your objective was not sinister, you would have been as transparent as you could be from the very beginning. But the worst mistake that we can make is just to settle for another constitution. We cannot have every government that comes have a new constitution. We cannot have that. Let's have one that is fit for purpose. So that when Musa Jeng leaves and Sariang comes, there would be any need for Sariang to believe that he also needs to have a new constitution. For what? Every president with a republic? It does not make sense. And President Barrow and his people must understand that. There was a time when Jammeh thought that all the amendments he was making in that constitution will always benefit him for the rest of his life. And guess what today? He's not in power. And I believe he has serious problems with some provisions now because it's not favoring him. So we need to have leaders who are not only forward-thinking, but leaders who respect us enough to give us what would benefit us not only today, but generations to come. But with this trajectory, every government that comes would have a new constitution. Before you know it, will be the country of more constitutions than anything else. It doesn't make sense. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Definitely. That's my take for now.
Sid Mati, your reaction? Sid.
Yes. Well, I mean, the sentiment is more. I think for them, they even expected that because I mean, the constitution, like I said, we are not making a constitution for an individual, but just for cabinet, for somebody that is elected by the people who also, come present. People's reaction definitely wouldn't be that good. But for me, the whole question now, and I mean, I have no answers. I have it's still the question of, what do we do? What is presented? I mean, should we just say, oh, let us reject it? And I agree. At some point, I was saying the other day that bukan nakala marnan surat tahen nan put it so pumpe uye how don't want to say
Garus.
yeah.
Garus.
So sometimes it's also about what is behind some of the positions, some of the decisions that they've made. We will never know. But this is also for me also the the document, especially the one that I see now being compared, especially with the tax changes. It also provides a good opportunity for Gambians to see exactly, even without any explanation, for Gambians to know exactly this is what cabinet is thinking. This is the way that they want to move the country, and that is clear. People now see that part. But for me, the issue is like when it gets to Parliament, how it is going to be handled in that process, and also what should be the role of all of us individually. Should it be more like a movement that say, I mean, let's return some of the, of course, some of the important points, some of the important issues that were discussed, or we just say, I mean, since cabinet want to use us as a scapegoat for bringing constitution, let it end and then let them start with a more genuine process. So these are things that also, I mean, as a country, definitely, as much as we need to look at the document itself, we also need to think about how are we going to respond to this very important question. Can we, either way, because passing this constitution as it is, and having the 1997 constitution, it's like Captain Saddam and General Saddam Hussein. It's almost the same, just changes of of names without necessarily addressing the aspirational questions that Gambians have. And for me, those are things that should be the guiding principles of any constitutional making process. You know,
so said,
yeah.
said, I don't want you to do a little bit because ultimately, clearly, the way this thing is starting, we've heard what Pastor Samba said, Sariyang before that, and there's total agreement that the process itself is flawed from the get-go. Obviously, most Gambians believe that the government is not interested in having this constitution passed. My approach has always been there were changes that were made, and I want to pick your brain. I talked about what are the deal breakers for me, and again, I want us to dig the 1997 constitution, not at all costs. Now, I'm not saying dig the 1997 constitution and take whatever is out there. That's not what I'm saying. So I want to read some things based on what Assis said on the program, The Brunch, that these were the changes. And I want you to tell me whether are those deal breakers for you. Are you willing to still, hopefully, that the National Assembly will be able to fix it? Pasamba talked about the arrest, changing from 48 hours that was in the original draft, 2020, to 72 hours, back to where it is 1997. Is that a deal breaker for you? Removal an entire chapter 5 that was kind of yanked out.
Yeah.
Is that a deal breaker for you? The freedom of assembly was touched. Removal of, secondary education was another one that was removed, meaning free. They just, for basic primary level, there's free education. For secondary, in this 2024 draft, was taken out. The decentralization was also deleted, which is even in the 1997 constitution. Consumer protection was also deleted. And composition of the judiciary committee, nomination of a whole lot of other things. Now, I want you to help us here and also our viewers. What are the deal breakers for you? Or do you just think, based on the changes that they made, to hell with it, and let's just stay with the 1997 constitution? Or do we want to give it a chance and hopefully the National Assembly can fix it? And can they even fix it? Is it fixable, in other words?
Every document, is fixable. I think this current draft, when it gets to Parliament, they have, if it passes through the stages, they can rework it. I think at least that's the opportunity that is there, because then Parliament is the people's house. If there's that agreement and support, that is very possible. So in terms of, for me though, in terms of deal break,
we kind of lost it a little bit. Sid. So, I guess we need to interject here. So, Sarian.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Oh. Okay.
Sorry, man, maa ngi nekk fii di wax rek ndekete maa ngi mute. Tuuti ma nekk génne.
So
what I was saying is, I said for the, decentralization issue, for decentralization, for me, I'm very passionate about that one. And just to move it itself raises two questions for me. One, the question of what the people aspire for, devolution of power, making sure that the development is brought through their local government. But now central government seems, cabinet wants to remove this whole entire structure, or so or less, and just have I don't see it clearly. I'm not going to speak clearly, but in terms of what I'm seeing, in terms of deleting that also, that doesn't really stand well with me. That needs to be relooked at, because eventually, right now, as we are speaking, this government has quite a lot of money where they're working on this whole issue of decentralization. We also, and if you look at the National Development Plan, these are all issues that have been stated that we are going to work towards this. And now you are presenting a constitution that kind of limits or remove those kind of stuff. For me, it doesn't really tally. But the other point that I was trying to make is that, in terms of whether it could be fixed, or even my position in terms of what are the deal breakers, I would always like to stand from an organizer point of view where we bring in people to discuss some of this issue, because even evidently during referendum, if the current draft as it is past parliament, I don't think I'm not going to support that, because for me decentralization itself is critical, because that's the way that people should get power. But for me, I think there is still opportunity. I mean, I'm a very optimistic person. I think what the cabinet has done, despite all the different sentiments, is that they have presented, a draft, and a draft needs to be improved. It needs to be better off if the conditions outside it are right. But then the question that we're asking is, are the conditions, the current conditions, are they okay? And here, this is why also the political lenses must come in, and all those different aspects. But I think what is still early for me. It's still early for me. I want to hear more legal conversations. I want to also, see. Like for consumer protection, I hear some people are saying it might not be necessary because you have a consumer act, but I want to hear more of the legal experts, talking about the legality, and then for me, I think that's the time that I can also look at, in terms of the political aspect, its impact and possible influence. But the issue of also, I mean, the IEC, people have been also talking about strengthening the institution, but I see that the chairman, instead of being, taken to the National Assembly, you talk about judicial service or something. Sometimes some of these processes of taking people to the assembly and all that, the idea more broadly is also to get, broader partisan support, to confirm somebody. But a sensitive institution like IEC, the president and judicial commission and other people that he is likely to appoint is like the same person doing the same job. So there are things that we need to, I mean, like I said, we need to look at critically. But for me, in terms of fixing, now the ball is in the court of the National Assembly. But this should not be the role of the Assembly itself. I mean, even at our own VU level, committee level, we can organize Yansi diaspora. There are things organize, some small citizen assemblies, send comments to representatives. There are ways that we can do it, but eventually, also depending on the politics at the assembly, I don't see that this is something that people will be too excited about to fight for, to say bring it about, do like that, because people feel defeated already because they have not been involved. But the question for us also as civil society, how can we inspire, that, I mean, of course, this is a problem, but there are other opportunities that we can use to amend this. And eventually, if it is not fixed through the parliamentary process, it will get to the public. And if the public don't like it, I mean, you cannot tell people how to vote. They will vote the way they want to vote. So those things are also there. So there's an opportunity for us to engage, but we are also a pluralized society. How do we answer all these different issues with this particular constitutional process? And for me, that's what I thought the whole draft was supposed to do, to help address the polarization within society, but also to bring partners together. But I mean, so far it's not the case.
Go ahead, Sarayan.
Musa, I think with your diplomacy, you need to invite the Minister of Justice to come out here and speak to folks. I mean, you got to do the PR. And I think we all want a constitution, but I'm in for a good constitution. As Coach said, not every president who comes in and nitpick what they want and throw it out. I think it needs to be good for consumption. It needs to be good and at least hold our elected officials accountable, including the president. I mean, there is areas where a lot like conflict of interest. Those are important. If we want a country, we don't want folks to divert our mega resources to their own. I think we need to set those boundaries, those limitations, and ingrain them into the Constitution and hold them accountable. The immunity clause, I mean, that's been removed. What is the reason why the immunity clause? Because if there was a feedback from based on what's been drafted in 2020 by CRC, there was a collective consultation. And from those feedback, we knew Jammeh was converting personal businesses, competing with private sector. Gambians don't want that anymore. They don't want their president to be engaged in businesses. That's why they want that clause. They want that to be part of the 2020. If Dr. Jallo removed that clause, I think he owes the Gambian population an explanation. We can. I mean, that's not compromisable, because obviously the fact that he took that out creates a lot of eyebrows. So he should be in the position, and this is in the hands of the National Assembly. And hopefully there shouldn't be any partisan lenses, as you call it. I think we need to speak as it is, and we need to hold ourselves accountable. Even the land allocation, there was a commission that was put in place into the 2020 Constitution. That's been removed. We had issues about lands, and there's uproar every week, even in Wellingara this week. People will rise up. I mean, if we don't want tensions, why are we removing that? What is the explanation that we remove those land allocation commission from the Constitution? What is the reason behind it? So these are the reasons. And as I said, the president has the power. He's the commander-in-chief to appoint someone. But I think also this goes into a greater conversation. I think it is a placeholder, and it protects those individuals that, the Constitution has protected me. I can work, he can nominate me, but he cannot fire me because I'm protected. And that's the protection that we're working on. And you talk about the nominated members too. That is something that I didn't even talk about. He changed that because he nominated someone, and the Constitution went through the court. The court said, no. This is a 5-year term. You nominate, despite you have a disagreement with them, they still you nominated them. They need to stay. But he watered that down too. So I don't know what we need to say about this. What are the compromises here? Because the fact, all these things are what is the reason behind it? Because if you convey your thought and back up your thought, put an argument out there, and let it be for public consumption. It hasn't been done. And I think that's what the conversation needs to drive. What we want. We want a constitution, but we want a constitution that is for all Gambians, regardless of a political party. This is not about one party or another, or one president. It's for holding our presidents and elected officials accountable. I mean, for the long term. And it's better for Gambia because it will hold each individual accountable. And I think that's what my contribution is on this one.
Surprisingly, my man just dialed in. Anga.
Radiboski.
This is a surprise.
I'm sure it is for you and for many others.
Yes. So how you been?
I've been doing great, man. Enjoying my time in the US. Having the best time of my life.
I see that.
Radiboski.
Yes.
Why I'm not let you say after Serian.
Yes, sir, Nyancho. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing wonderful. I miss you, man, and I'll call you later after the program.
Yeah, but I gotta see your eye. I gotta see your face. I know you've been
You're not going to show it because he is fat and all that, so that's why he's not going to show his face.
You guys cannot see me. No, honestly, you guys cannot see me.
It's blurry. It's blurry.
But
okay, maybe it's the way I am. No, it may be the background. Hold on, let me see.
Banker can never do anything right with this technology thing. It's always maybe the distinct.
I'm sitting at the back of the house because the kids are making so much noise inside the house. Right. So, okay, how am I now?
It's better.
It's better. I don't know. I was sitting inside the house and the kids are just making so much noise. I decided to come out. I'm gonna call you panga. You are still in the grind.
Panga, I don't know whether you're following up with the program about the Constitution, and we talked a little bit about it at the Ngente yesterday. And what's your take? Most people, obviously, you've heard Sariang, Pasamba, myself, and Timothy Cow. there is unanimity, but there is also, what did you tell us? What do you think?
No, look, I think people tend to miss one fundamental aspect of all of this. Constitutional building processes are not easy. They are always contentious like this, like what you all are doing. You know, Coach, I'm sure knowing him, he's railing against the government. You sitting there trying to be reasonable, guys. Tarian, you know, trying, you know, being reasonable, but at least has still having the partisan sort of influence to his take. And then others and others and others will give it their own take. So it's always been like this. Constitutional building processes have never been this smooth sailing. Everybody comes and, you know, agrees, and boom, it's over. No, yeah, the U.S. one was actually very, very, very contentious, and I mean so contentious it was not even funny, because you had at the federal level those who actually believed in federalism, that is a strong federal government, and then you had we call them the federalists, and then you had the anti-federalists, people who believed that, you know, you hear those debates up to now these days, states' rights, you know, all this nonsense that Republicans tend to talk about. These are from back in those days when they were trying to build the Constitution, even the bicameral system that they have, the house, the two houses, even that was a very contentious issue. You had people who had a lobby. I mean, the Federalist Papers, I'm sure you hear about it. This was written by John Jay, James Madison, and others, trying to influence the process by writing in news articles and trying to espouse for this federalism and all these things. I mean, states, when it even went to the states level to ratify it, it was another very, very, very contentious issue. It took many, many years to actually be able to get this thing done. And because in the beginning, to begin with, when they sat down to write the Constitution, they were not sitting down. That was not the plan at all. That just happened to come by the way. The Articles of Confederation was what they sat down to make adjustments to, because the one day they had was not helping with running the country. So they said, okay, this Article of Confederation, let's go back and tweak it so that we can manage the country better. And then during the course of that conversation was when, I guess, somebody said, hey, why don't we just write a constitution if that's what it is? And then so they went about writing a constitution, not knowing the treacherous road that they were about to fly on. And it was a very, very nasty, contentious affair from their level. When they went to the states to get the states to ratify it, you know, you had some who wanted to maintain slavery. Even the language itself about black people, I mean, we are considered numerically only to be considered two-third, I mean, person, and not in real personal, but by number times. Two-third. I'm sorry, here.
Zoom into the draft. Zoom into the draft. Yeah. Our situation. We get the what America went through. You're saying that it's a contentious issue. People are going to have different positions. But knowing what we know, we had the 2020 and it failed. And here we have the government went ahead, make their amendments, and people are up in roar. The process, lack of consultation. What's your take? Is this thing salvageable? Or do
no, that's what I'm saying. No, what I'm saying is that's why I started the American experience. This is exactly how constitutional building processes go. The government, you said, went about writing their own thing or making their own adjustments without consultation. Now they came to the public and the public is up and roar about it. This is exactly what happened with the US one. When these folks went about writing the Constitution, when they went to the states level, the states are like, is this what you want us to ratify? Seriously? Are you guys joking? And so Gambians too are reacting the same way towards the government or the draft that they are floating around, because some will say, well, you didn't consult us. Some will say, in fact, you took out a lot from the other one. Some will say, what the very provision, you seem to have changed it. Some will. So all these issues that we are dealing with, I'm trying to say that let Gambians understand that constitutional building processes go like this. So let everybody raise their voices, continue to make some noise, and so that we can all sit down at some point and see how we can build compromise, because it has to come out of that kind of process where compromises have to be made. US one was a big compromise, like I told you, even about slavery, even the Bill of Rights, to put it in the Constitution was forced by the states, because they were saying, look, you are giving us a strong federal government and there is no individual rights that is being recognized here. This is all about government's power. We want individual rights. Then they, as a compromise, they came up with the Bill of Rights. That's how the Bill of Rights came about. So Gambia too, all I'm saying is the government came out with this draft. Okay, fine. Now let's make noise. Let's make sure that the changes that we want to see in it to perfect it. we made that noise and influence the process, and not and even the threats that are coming out. That's all good. People say we got to gut it if you don't make these changes. If you do this, we are not going to accept it. This is all okay. I think at the end of the day, we can at least sit down. The government recognizing that there are a lot of people or constituencies who have a serious problem with the draft as it is, and for those people folks also understanding that the government too has an interest in this, because they are the draft leader, basically the ones pushing the thing anyway. In the end, it's going to become the constitution of the people. So that means broader consultation, sitting down and seeing where compromises can be made, because nobody is going to get it all. Just like the U.S. Constitution, they didn't get it all. In fact, they went about with 27 amendments since when it was ratified, was what has been made so far. All of that to go back and say, okay, I know they agreed to this before, let's see how we can make it better. So this is the point, to really look at it and sit down and discuss it. I hope that civil conversation will take place at some point, not people just saying it's a zero-sum game. I get everything I want, or we are not going to accept it. It cannot go like that. We all have to understand that constitutions always come out of a negotiation process, always, in any country.
Top Samba.
Baka.
Mm-hmm.
You've come here, showed us that you are a law student, have read and all that stuff. You know, you're practicing on us. But here is the thing, Banker.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not a zero-sum game. It would come from a very contentious issue. You mentioned the U.S. Constitution, which they started writing in 1787. You know, of course, to get it to be ratified by the 13 states, they needed to have 9. And the ratification happened, you know, by 1889 to coming. Even the amendments, the Bill of Rights, the amendments did not come in until December 15th, 1791.
Right. Yeah.
And then so, but here is the issue though, Banker. And this is where the difference is. The United States did not fight their revolution based on having a better constitution. Their initial thing was to liberate themselves from British colonial rule in the Gambia. And this is where sometimes, we have to put this thing in its proper perspective. During our fight, in fact, the very essence of the creation of what was the name? Coalition 26. There was a name for it. Coalition for Opposition. This thing for electoral reform. You know, the objective was first, let's have electoral reform. Second, we needed a new constitution that would end, again, they've emphasized it so many times, self-perpetuating rule.
Right.
And this was why, when they went to that convention, the primary thing about it was, how do we come up with a new constitution? How many would end all these problems that we've had before? And this is where President Barrow and his people, we understand the difficulties of writing constitution, but you cannot start it from a very dishonest point of view in itself, and selfishness, looking at what is in it for me. Because in fact, what you say, the zero-sum game, that's what Barrow gave us the first time around. Because since he didn't have everything he wanted, he was ready to just say, you know what, to hell with it. You and I and Musa Jeng were on the phone with Ahmad Ba the night before the voting of this thing. And we all heard what he told us. We knew, before most people, that it was not going to pass. They were adamant. And the issue centered around the presidential powers and this retroactive clause and all that. For somebody who came and told us that, I was going to be for 3 years. 3 years, maybe 10 years. What are you them? But even with this, the issue that we're running into, and if you we have to be very careful. We've seen Senegal so many times in flames based on ambiguity on these term limits. When Wada relied on technicalities to run for a third term, it did not end very well for Senegal. He lost. When Macky did the constitutional amendment and then wanted to rely on technicalities to run for a third term, it did not go well for Senegal. And this is where I believe the starting point is for the government to be very clear with the Gambian people, especially Adam Barrow, as to what he intends to do and where he wants to lead this. Because at the end of the day, nobody fancies the 1997 constitution. Like I was saying, Banker, you are a law student now, you use it. There is a great chance that you may not even know the accurate, they will tell you, as most of the law, they cannot even tell you the proper constitution that is in circulation in that country. Most people don't know it. So again, all this thing, Musa, is Ansarian and said Jawfarama Jawhor, is for the government to do right by the people. We should not be having this problem here. And Musa, and I have to stick to this again. It is outright greed that has put us in this problem. Barrow is not looking for a perfect constitution. His cabinet are not looking for a perfect constitution. They are looking for a constitution that caters to their needs right now. They do not care about what happens tomorrow or the day after. And this is where the problem is. This whole ambiguity that surrounds it. Look at even the gazetting of this draft. They had the draft there. They did not take it anywhere. They went to Parliament. He made all this lofty arguments about drafting it, or gazetting it. Was it gazetted? No. And the very essence of gazetting is just so that for the citizens to be able to scrutinize a bill that is supposed to go to Parliament. That's what it is. Before we had this, it used to be published by the newspapers and all. That's just what the objective is.
So, Coach. I mean, I think most of us are saying this thing, and that is, the process is flawed. It's horrible. It's greedy. They went in there and basically look at the things that they wanted to change to straighten the president's hand. We are where we are. How do we move forward? What is there? What are the options? What do we need to do? Should we rely on the National Assembly to fix it? So we would have a mass mobilization and tell them, you know what? We're not going with this. What is there that needs to be done? Because without a doubt, the 1997 Constitution, the dictatorship legacy, is still hanging over us, and that needs to change. I mean, amendments are the amendments.
And Musa, I hear what you're saying, and unfortunately,
when I talk like that, you have some idiots saying, "Oh, this guy is a tribalist." You have some idiots saying, "Oh, this guy is this, this guy is that." We're talking about a platform. We come here every Sunday to speak our mind and call things for what they are. We're getting distracted by non-entities, and I'm just human. You know what I mean? I am just human. I listen to people. I told you when it first came out, Sarian, my first statement was, I don't want this thing to be derailed, just like it was derailed back in 2020. Because then it didn't even get to the second reading. Everybody take their position, turn hard line. Duma defli, kine duma defli. We ended up with nothing but zero. We went into 2021 and Barrow won the election. The rest is history. What I'm trying to avoid is, how do we change that? That we don't keep tefi. There is no compromise. At the end of the day, it's not even going to pass. We're going to go into 2026 under the 1997 Constitution. And I can guarantee you, it will be an uphill battle to bring about change. And another thing that I once said to comment on Banker, it will not take time, because when Gambians believe that there is no way for change, I'm telling you, the security people will, just like what happened in Burkina Faso, what happened in Mali, what happened in Guinea-Conakry, if there is no way out for change, people take things into their own hands, and our democracy will be in jeopardy. Till the cows come home. But that, to me, that's what I want to prevent, and that's what's driving me. At the end of the day, it's sausage making. There is going to be a compromise. Call it for whatever you want to call it. But man, non la ko gisee.
And most man nga laajoon question is who make a jala nga wasi said mati.
Because some people just frustrate the hell out of you sometimes.
No, why man, take some nana some tea bang and coffee.
We've been doing this past summer for 10 years.
You know what is it?
Faramos. Nana Dohby. Coach, we are hearing you loud and clear.
Are you guys hearing me?
No, we are hearing you. I can hear you.
Hello?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Musa,
Okay.
you can hear him, right?
Now, here is the thing, Musa. Like I was saying, at the end of the day, I agree with you. We have to find a way this thing work because we need a constitution. Now, it would take making, like Karamba would say, where we'll all have to agree to disagree. I believe that we cannot rely on just leaving it to the National Assembly. No, that I think that will be a huge mistake. Because at the end of the day, they would be the one who should make the changes. But what needs to happen was, first, we engage them. Second, civil society must be very engaged. I'm not talking about saying conference directly. They must be very, very proactive in making sure this happens. And third would be, if it's necessary, mass mobilization to tell the people that, you know what, we want a constitution finally that can survive. Like I said, Musa, otherwise, this might pass. And you know what? It has no chance in passing anyway without compromise. Because there is no party that has 75% of the votes.
Exactly.
So they should be compromised. So maybe it is important for all of us. You know, these arguments too are important because at the end of the day, the citizens must always show those who govern them that, you know what, we do not like where you're taking us. Okay? But I think all democratic options should be on the table. Mass mobilization, civic engagement, and all that. That's just what it is. Advocacy, agitation, you want to call it that. Now the government would come and use all these words, try to discourage people from doing what they can do. But at the end of the day, the cabinet has had their say. Now it is our time to have our say. They've had their say. They've shown us who they are. We are telling them we are the ones who put you there. Without us, you will not be there. This is a time for citizens to stand up and make sure that for once we have a government that respects us. And for one, we have a government that writes a constitution that is for us and not for them. Jammeh did everything with the 1997 constitution for him. Adam Barrow has shown that without what he wants, he derailed the first one. The second one is like, I'm giving you now, give me a constitution that I want, not a good constitution that the African Gambians want. This nonsense has to stop, and we, the people, must make it stop. They've had their say. It is our time.
Coach Kaja, look, but let me put it this way. We want a constitution that is for them and for us, for everybody. Because at the end of the day, when we had the Constitutional Review Commission around, we had this conversation before. We need to go back and look at the Constitution is for in the first place. Constitutions are for only one thing and one thing alone. They are supposed to serve as a bulwark against the excesses of the democracy. You know, democracy, people tend to say democracy, but democracy has some serious limitations, very, very serious limitations. Key among which obviously is the tyranny of the majority, because it's majority rule. We are saying, hey, if I know that you, Coach Musa and Sariang, all on my side, and Ibrahim comes along, wants a proposal on the table, all I have to say is, hey, let's vote. And then suddenly Ibrahim's voice is never heard. Constitutions came to actually address such, because democracy has serious problems in terms of minority rights, people whose opinions should matter, but they are not because of some connection, or because of they don't have the power, because they are not rich, because they don't have the numbers behind them. The Constitution came to equalize that whole thing. That's why they call it the great equalizer, because it creates equality among everybody, whether you are a majority, minority, whether you are rich, whether you are poor, whether you are sick, whether you are healthy, whether you are good at this, or whether you are poor not good at this. The Constitution comes to say, look, we are all equal under the law. All equal under the law. So at the end of the day, no matter who you are, the Constitution is the one that makes us all equal. This is what the Constitution is for. If once you don't achieve that objective, then you have failed in the constitutional building process. So, but unfortunately, what is equal to Coach is unequal to another person. What is just to Coach is unjust to another person. So in the end, with that kind of disagreement among a population, a sit down to really consult. So what I would suggest right now is that the parliament, because since it's going to the parliament now, the parliament should have a set up, obviously, a committee, and then carry out a consultative process. Meaning what? Let them bring the civil society, bring the regular people on the streets, the fruit sellers at the market, the women's groups, the minorities, the Akus and the Jolas and others that are pretty much in minority. All the other groups, I mean, Christians, everybody that is in the minority, people in the majority, everyone from every sector, political parties, all of these stakeholders, bring all of them to the table and say, okay, here's the draft. What do we do to make it better? And of course, even at that point, there'll be a lot of joking, but at least a conversation would have started from there. Because in the end, let's all remember, 75% of the population have to ratify this. That's what has to happen. Two-thirds majority. So in the end, if you don't have a buy-in from that population, then this is basically the fruitless exercise. You are just doing it for the heck of it. So I think it's important for the government, the Minister of Justice, the Attorney General at this point, to really make sure that he pushes it in that direction in consultation with the Parliament, and then let them start to really look at how do we make this a process where people take ownership of it. Because the people's document, it belongs to the people. That's why at the beginning of the constitution, they say, we the people. In the end, it's about them, us as a people, whether including government, the regular people, the civil society, everybody. So I think that's where it needs to start from at this point. If that does not happen, then there will be a serious problem. I hear a lot about things taken out from the draft that was presented before and things that are put in and all that kind of stuff. But all of these things can become clear and a discussion can take place around them so that in the end, we can have a document of the people. This is where I want to see go. But they all travel, don't pay them any mind. Little minds, what do they do? People who, no,
at some point, when you don't deal with it, no, believe me, at some point when you don't deal with it, there are a lot of people that...
Boss, are you muted? Boss, I'm not hearing you. Are you muted?
Musa. I wanna. Musa.
Can you hear me?
Musa. Faramos.
Can you guys hear me? No?
Faramos.
Yes.
We can hear you, Faramos.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay. Now, Seth, go ahead, because Musa, I wanted to respond. Give me a chance to respond to that. Seth, go ahead.
Seth, I really wanted to talk about, again, I know we're hot, but at the end of the day, too, we want to have a new constitution. And seriously, looking at the reaction, I'm looking at this and I'm trying to see, is there a pathway? Is it even possible? And then what is the role of the Attorney General? Because, Montamid, you can't just put this out there. Is it possible for him to yank it out and bring back the 2020? Is that even possible?
I don't know in terms of the legality or in terms of what is possible or not possible, but sometimes I feel that we things are not being done in in a vacuum. Like we are being conditioned, by the existing constitution, but also by certain considerations. So, for me, this one I will not even be engaging the Ministry of Justice, because this one I will just say is a cabinet position, is a cabinet decision, it's cabinet that brought it to. Of course, he's the cabinet. But I don't think rectify all that. But then for me, the other issue is this. We are here. Hanga man. If you ask me. What I like people do usually, wherever there is blockades, I always try to see what are the opportunities. What opportunities can we have, and whether we can even try these opportunities. And I had Coach and many talk about the need to take up the document. For me, the issue is like now as it is, we have to. It's a draft. It's already started the process of coming to the National Assembly. It will get to the National Assembly. It will be discussed by the National Assembly. But then for us, within this period, whether you are in the diaspora, whether you are here, how can we organize ourselves? Not in the, because eventually, National Assembly members themselves, they have to consult with their own constituencies. How do we ensure, like what happened the last time, where I was in Parliament and parliamentarians come and say, "Oh, my people this, my people that," and I was wondering, like, I'm part of the people. Like, so how do we ensure that the people from the onset, one, understand what the changes are, because that's the starting point of getting this conversation moving. What are these changes? Why is it different from the first one? Because the first one, everybody know that was drafted by the CRC, and so therefore, from the basis, from the get-go, this has to be explained. And I think for me, that's where I think the Ministry of Justice can come if they have an understanding on that. But I will not go into say, oh, they are responsible entirely, even though they are responsible for drafting. But this is more like a cabinet, because cabinet sat over this and then they come up with it, and they're presenting this to us. But for us at the level of civil society, and recently for us we have like a £30,000 funding from the British High Commission, because what we were anticipating was that when the constitutional process come out, we want to engage the public. So part of our design strategy is to like have a 6 months radio program engagement where we go, thematically in terms of what the constitution is saying with legal experts in the local languages to explain to the people, eventually, as part of a process to one, help them understand what the content is saying, but also secondly, prepare them ahead of referendum if we get there. But even if we don't get there, our intention is to ensure that we help people to understand these different processes. And for me, I think that's where the role of civil society is going to be. How do we create these platforms for engagement? But it shouldn't be, constitutional making is not just the role of civil society or political actors, but everybody. You are in your own corner, you're on social media, you're engaging, you have your friends, you can organize it like a Zoom or some sort of meeting, and then you present it. You discuss it as in a sort of a group, sort of citizen assemblies, and then you make your recommendations, and then you forward it to your National Assembly member or to civil society groups, so that during the conversation, some of these things could be forwarded. I think at this minute, the other day at the Gambia Participate event, I asked this question: why is it that during the independence period, and at independence in 1965, we know that we had an independent constitution, but at that time, if you're looking at the history of this country, pluralization at that time was so huge. This country was so divided, but the independent leaders at all the political parties, they came together and formed one coalition basically, so that the Gambia could get independence. Can we learn from that particular experience and lesson? Despite all what has happened so far, to see how we can build it forward. And but the other question that I also keep asking then was, looking at that time where they made the 1965 Constitution and even the 1970 Republican Constitution, Gambians were not so educated. The educational level or the number of Gambians that were educated compared to now is totally different. Today, Gambians are so educated. That's why it didn't take even a whole day before people could detect. And of course, with the use of technology, people could detect all the changes that have, been established within the document. How is it that we, as a highly educated society, well-exposed society, better off society to an extent, we are not being able to, use dialogue or engagement as a mechanism to advance some of these, national issues, because constitutional making is national issue. Those that are proposing can propose it anyhow, but it's up to us to accept it. And our representatives are there to discuss on our behalf. We are there also to engage with them. Can we continue to engage with them? For me, as a civil society, this is the approach that I will say. Let's perhaps follow it through Parliament, but eventually, also people will look at it as a waste of time. That maybe it can get to Parliament and it's just history, and so it's better not to waste people's time and then just remove it, and so that it could be retracted. But so these are also issues or decisions that will be made through constitutional dialogues, the citizens at the local level, community level, bantabas, and you don't need civil society to come there to say, okay, let's discuss about this provision. Like for instance, the farmers. I was very much interested in that provision. This morning I went to say, oh, okay, maybe they have, cut that part of the farmers where it was the 2020 draft was talking about the need to consult farmers when it comes to engagement, but I didn't see anything being done on that. So these different sectoral groups also need to sit to discuss about these issues. And at the end of the day, whether we pass it is or I think we still have an opportunity to look into it. And I think from my perspective as civil society, this is what I'm going to say. Let's go and meet within the parliament, but have discussion outside. And for us, one of our projects will be doing that, and we'll try to also try to digitalize it in a way where people can easily, send in comments and do things that they could do, so that we can be engaging in the process, and as much as possible, try to avoid this whole fragmentation, because in the past that was the lesson that I learned, that okay, the Christians will come here, the Muslims come there, the parties, political parties, this political party, that. Me, I don't care about any of these such groupings. Me, I care about a Gambia, and Gambia encompasses all of these different entities and individuals. And so, at some point, we need to be more making of a constitution for Gambia. How do we, think about that? For me, is the way forward, but not just to focus on some of the issues that happened in the past. And I think there's lessons out of that we can address that. But what are the dangers of us not getting a constitution or a delayed process? Today in this country, Gambia, we are so unfair to so many institutions, and I'm gonna pick the security institutions and looking at their, and well, of course, one can say is the laws and all those different stuff, the acts. But you look at the colonial, we always focus on the 1997, is a Jame stuff. But the structure of our society is colonial still. And people still do not see that. We have not moved to that extent. Some of our institutions are colonial institutions, still set up within the colonial framework. The police, in particular, you have the fair service. And sometimes that's why I'm not so hard on this, because you cannot expect to live in a democratic society or expect democracy, the benefit of democracy, when your society is more dictatorial in terms of structure and all that. And these are part of the questions and conversations that we need to look at. And for me, that's why also the issue of decentralization is very critical, because decentralizations allow power to move from the center and get to the people. But now, what we are seeing with this current draft is that they want everything to go back to the center. It's mean you're taking me back to the colonial period. And for me, the issue is for this country to move democratically, to move economically, to move, socially. We need to move beyond all these different fragmentations and start thinking, in terms of 50, 100 years, what would our great grandkids, what kind of society would they want to inherit? For me, that's the kind of conversation that we need to shape, but not to be just so myopic and for cabinet to feel like they have to, be too powerful and and say, okay, this is what we have to do today. But we need to think about the future, and the only way we can do that is to start it at the village level. Villagers say, village, let them have a village meeting, organize the constitution, because eventually the constitution will affect them. Let them sit around village, organize their bantabas. At least every village you have somebody that can read and write. Let them facilitate. And through that process, that's how you build a citizen movement. And all those things that we have, every village, every community, if they start bringing in their position, we can compile all that. For us, civil society will be very happy to put all that together, and then we dump it at parliament and say, well, this is what people are saying. And for me, that's the mechanism that has to be that has to be followed. I'm just talking because we're at a point where is frustrating on one hand, but it's also another opportunity on the other side. And it's like two roads not taken, or two roads divided, and we need to take one. I mean, we can take the one way, which we say we end it and start fresh, and another way we say let's take this as a first step, and then we build on that. And for me, I mean, based on my background, I'm going to take the second one, because given the 4 years and all that, but we build it in a way that it reflects the wishes of the people. And eventually, if we cannot get that, the people will eventually decide and they can reject it. So for me, usually, people also need to understand the power that they have. That this is not just going to be an imposition, or otherwise it will not go to parliament, it will not require 75%. So if you are not being involved, if you're not part of it, which of course, as many are saying, is the intention, it looks like the intention of the government. But for the people, we also need to take that opportunity to say, I mean, well, this is what you propose, but this is what we want. If you don't give us what we want, I mean, we don't go with it. For me, I think, in a nutshell, yeah.
Say,
Can
give me
I
a
jump in there?
second, Banker.
Okay,
Banker, I wanted to
Terry.
add. Yeah, I want to add one thing to. And Musa asked this question, and I think it's really good to have a conversation. And what Sate highlighted, instead of the Barrow Dowda Jallo draft constitution, I mean, all the things that Sate just highlighted, that is part of the process of CRC 2020 draft.
Yeah.
There are key ingredients in there. I mean, there are things that we cannot compromise. I think the conversation should be, at least, because this one right here, I mean, the public sentiment, obviously, people are pushing back because, number one, the lack of transparency and lack of exhaustive consultation process that it's lacking in tabling it and making those changes behind the scene. People felt that they don't have input. So I think where the conversation needs to, what would it take? What would it take to bring back the 2020 draft? Things that are within the 2020 draft that create a little bit of skimminess or disagreement. We work on that. And I think this is where the civil societies, the political parties, and they have this group called, which brings the inter-party committee. They come out there. I think they are very, very critical to say, hey, here is 3 things that we have right now. This is what we have. 1997 Constitution, 2020, and the current draft by Dowda and Barrow. Now, we have to strike a balance. We are not going to have everything in this single Constitution. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
I don't know who wants what.
Right.
We're not going to have it. So now, what can we compromise on? I mean, would that retroactive clause make you say, I'm going to diss this one? The 2020, when it's all inclusive, there's a lot of things, great things in there. Are we able to compromise on something and say, this is what we want, let's make amendments and pass it? Or we want this and we're going to reject it and go back to ground zero. And I think this is where the conversation, because before spending money, these folks travel. They travel in the villages. They had conversation. They had public community meetings. They came overseas. They talked to us. People provide input. That input, which becomes the final document of 2020 draft, is the will and input from Gambians around the world and within Gambia. And I think that should be upheld. And if there is something that like things that we are all like hot about, these are ingredients of people based on the exposure they had over 22 years. So 72 hours versus 48 hours. People don't want to be exposed. They don't want to be kept incommunicado without knowing their right to the police. We've endured that for 22 years. We fought for it. We show up at protests. We say Jammeh is a dictator. So that underlying pinnacle, that principle right there is saying, how do we change that stuff, right? Let's look at those and change that. And I think if we do, I think we'll end up getting a great constitution that works out for everyone, right? Not just the middle but we have to strike this. And the leadership has to start with the president and say, hey, what can we do? I know there's a pushback on this one. Now let's bring order and decorum and have a good conversation, heart-to-heart conversation. Everyone is not going to have everything that they want. We know that. That's not how things work. But at least we can pin onto what majority wants, the popular clauses within the Constitution. And it seems like the ones that have been deleted, a lot of people love those clauses. And you don't just impose upon people. You gauge
and somehow do some type of triangulation and figure out what is the most popular ones that I can get majority to support what I have. And you work your way out and trying to roll out a compromise. And if not, we're going to sit here and talk about it. But I think the whole thing starts with, what do we have? We have a 1997, we have a middle one, which is CRC 2020, and we have the 2024 draft. So which one is better? Which actually convey the aspiration and hopes of our Gambia and what we've been fighting for prior to 2026, and how can we uphold that? And I think the conversation needs to be driven around that, and hopefully, we can come to a compromise.
That's for me, everything. It looks like we are all beating a dead horse. What I've said, what said Matijao said, and what Coach said, what Musa said, it's all the same. We are not even in any disagreement here. I think we are literally all pounding on the same issue. Where I think the conversation needs to graduate into is not to really sit here and just have about, this will require compromise, we must compromise. These divisions that we are seeing are normal in a constitutional building process. Where what we need to really discuss now is, how do we bring all the stakeholders together to really bring about that compromise that we are talking about? The conversation needs to be heavy on the how, on that aspect, rather than the need for it. Because I think the need for it is already a foregone conclusion. Anybody who sits here thinking that this is not something that is normal, it's very, very normal. When it first came out, some were saying we're going to trash it, we're going to accept it, which is fine. That's what people do when constitutions are being discussed. Some will take hardline positions, some will insist on this, some will insist on that. But at the end of the day, we all come to recognize that since we are a country of the people, all of us together, we need to sit down then devise a strategy to bring all of us together to discuss the differences and then build a compromise. Now, that discussion right there, I hope Father Mose and Coach and Sarian, moving forward, the conversation is going to be about, okay, how do we really get everybody in the country to sit down, all the stakeholders, all the different constituencies, all the different interest groups, all the different facets, to really sit down in one room and discuss this. Not, this is where I disagree with my good friends, Said, not to necessarily go out around the country and talk to the farmers and then bring it. No. Let the farmers be at the table, because that's where we are now. A draft is already on the table. We have gone past the consult, that CRC stage now. We've gone past that. What needs to happen now is to really bring people, those farmers, to the table in combo and say, okay, here's the draft now. This is what we have. How do we make it better? This is where we are right now. Maybe State and the rest of the groups can.
Not to interject. What draft are you talking about? Because are you talking about the current 2024, or because you got to understand the 2020 was the one that was widely consulted with the farmers, with the welders, with the teachers, with everybody. So now if you want to bring back this 2024 and said consult them again, I don't know how that is.
Yes, exactly. That's very good. That's a very good question. At least you understand the how. I agree. I like that question. Yeah. The point is, you cannot discuss the 2024 constitution without discussing the 2020 draft. You cannot. I call the constitution, but it's the draft. Let me rectify that. Words have meaning in law. You cannot, the proposed draft, let me put it that way. You cannot discuss the 2024 proposed draft without discussing the 2020 proposed draft. It's not even possible. So it's not, I don't think that's we have to kind of get bogged down in which one do we really are we going to discuss. You better be sure that when you put that 2024 proposed draft on the table, people are going to come in there with the 2020 proposed draft, say, what did you do here? Why did you change this? What about this? What about that? And that's just a foregone conclusion. It's just going to happen that way. You know that, and I know that. That's why even yourself, the moment you raise this one, you cannot help but go back to the other one and say, they took stuff out of the other one, they changed that one, they did this. So, and that's the conversation that we need. Where now, how do we facilitate and say, maybe that's where you all come in. Civil society. You guys have funding agencies that you can contact to really bring everybody, not to go to the farmers again and consult and see what they want. No. Let's not prolong this process or make it into layers. No. Government also is a stakeholder.
But there's already, I think there is a, yeah, so there are two things. Whether you go to the people now, you have to go back to them. So that's why
no, but when we go, no, let me interject there.
Yeah.
If you don't mind. We are eventually you're going to go back to the people for a referendum anyway. But what I am saying is, at this point right now, the drafts, the proposed drafts that we are talking about, when those are put on the table, let the farmers be sitting there. Well, not all the farmers, but you get my point. Let the farmers be sitting there. Let all these other stakeholders be sitting there, really in a bid to see how do we make this into what we are really, really looking for.
Yeah.
And then that whatever that represents, I would hope that if it goes out there to the real world, the world of the people, then which will be the referendum stage, of course, then they will be more inclined to say, okay, let's go ahead and maybe give this a chance because it has something in it for us.
Yeah. So right now, you know, as it is, so this bill is not released for us to have our say or to have input. It is released for it to go to Parliament, and it is on its way to Parliament. You know.